Unfortunately, I haven't played nearly as much of Devolver's catalog as I would have liked, meaning I have varying degrees of familiarity with the games being ripped off by these bootlegs. The Absolver and Pikuniku bootlegs I wasn't able to play with that much since they're 2-player only, but from what I was able to determine, Super Absolver Mini Turbo Fighting Championship is basically a very stripped-down fighting game. Choose a character, duke it out, first to win 2 rounds is the victor, fairly standard stuff. There appear to be special moves, but I couldn't figure out how to pull them off. Meanwhile, Piku Biku Ball Stars is a basketball game, in which you try to score baskets using the rather unique movements of the characters from Pikuniku, which I actually managed to do. Granted, it was an own goal, but never mind, I still got one. Moving on to the single-player games now, and we'll take them in ascending order based on how familiar I was with the source material. As such, we'll start with Castlevania, which is the only game in the lineup where I had no clue whatsoever what was being ripped off, since the game in question was Gato Roboto, which prior to making this video I'd never even heard of. It's apparently a Metroidvania where you take control of a cat, who in turn takes control of a mech suit to explore an alien environment. Might have to give that one a closer look at some point. Castlevania, meanwhile, takes its cues more from the old-school Castlevania games, though I'd classify it as more of an even mix of OG Castlevania and Ghosts and Goblins, and already I'm calling shenanigans since your cat starts with 3 lives instead of, 9. Rather than a mech suit, the cat takes control of a suit of armor. Your owner has gotten himself trapped, and it's your job to rescue him. You have 2 weapons at your disposal, the sword for melee attacks, and shurikens for a more ranged approach. The shurikens have an upward arc to them and you have a limited amount, but you can always pick up more by smashing things with your sword. The cat can only take 2 hits before dying, with the first hit removing the cat's armor.
Why is Kitty Mew Mew buff now?
And the second hit being the fatal one. Thankfully, much like the shurikens, although far less frequently, you can pick up spare armor by smashing certain objects. If you aren't wearing any armor, then grabbing the armor pickup will immediately re-equip it. If you are wearing armor, the pickup will go into a standby slot, ready to descend upon you from on high should you lose your current armor, though you will of course need to survive long enough to even get to it. Lastly, if you already have armor equipped and in your standby slot, the armor pickup is replaced by an extra life. And that's about all I can tell you about this game since I really didn't get all that far. Because you know what OG Castlevania, Ghosts and Goblins, and Castlevania have in common? They're balls hard and I hate them! Next, we have Hotline Milwaukee and Ape Out Jr., both based on games I'd heard of before, but never played. In this case, Hotline Miami and Ape Out. And of the two, I'm more familiar with Hotline Miami, although that's not really saying much, since despite being aware of them, I still don't know that much about them. In Hotline Milwaukee, you play as, some dude in a mask. You can choose which mask you want to wear, but it doesn't appear to have any effect on the proceedings. When the game starts, you get a phone call from a not shifty-looking at all gentleman, who apparently thinks you work for an extermination company as he requests your help in dealing with an infestation in his basement. Grabbing either a knife or a pistol, standard vermin removal tools as we well know, you arrive at the house with the problem basement and begin killing everyone in sight. You have several weapons available to grab of both the melee and ranged varieties as you descend deeper into the house. Obviously, with the melee weapons, you can chop and thwack to your heart's content, but the bullet weapons have limited ammo and cannot be reloaded. All the weapons can, however, be thrown, which is just as effective since all enemies will go down in one hit, though on the flip side, so do you. One of the more fun games in the lineup for sure, but it could be a lot better if your main character felt more enjoyable to control than a drunk tank on ice. Ape Out saw you play as an ape on a mad dash for freedom, escaping from your captors in a wide variety of procedurally generated environments. Humans would try to stop you by shooting you, but you could grab them and use them as meat shields, or just yeet them at their fellow man. Ape Out Jr. follows much the same principle, although the procedural generation is out the window. Instead, the bootleg version more closely mimics Donkey Kong Jr., with the 8-bit aesthetic being the obvious giveaway, of course, but also due to playing as the son of Ape Out's ape, on a mission to rescue dear old daddy. Your main goal in each level is simply to make it to the elevator to progress to the next stage. Once again, humans with guns and even dynamite will be out to stop you, which they can do with just one hit. But much like in the real Ape Out, you can grab them, block shots with them, and chuck them, with that last action capable of netting you quite the points combo if you time it just right. Throwing things while in midair also grants you a double jump, which will often help you grab one of many bananas scattered throughout the stages. You get points for each banana you yoink and for each human you yeet, with bonus points for yoinking and yeeting everything, although it's not required to progress to the next level. I'd say it's more fun than a barrel of monkeys. But that's not that impressive when you think about it. I mean, did you ever have that game as a kid? It was shit. That just leaves Enter the Gun Dungeon, Shooty Boots, and Luff Trousers 3. All 3 bootlegs based on games I've played in the past. Luff Trousers 3 is a ripoff of Lufttrousers. Lufttrousers! and I didn't think it was possible to make a simplified version of an already relatively simple game, but here we are. You start with 3 planes, i.e. lives, and one simple goal. If it ain't you or your carrier, shoot it. Fighter jet? Shoot it. Battleship? Shoot it. UFO? Wait, what? Shoot it. Shot boat? Well, actually, you want to try and land on the shot boat so you can buy upgrades for your plane using the coins you get by destroying enemies. You could still shoot the shot boat, though. Enter the Gun Dungeon, in case it wasn't already blatantly obvious, is a take on Enter the Gungeon, stripped down to the bare essentials much like many of the other games in the list. Rather than a human character, you play as one of the walking bullets, and your aim is simply to shoot as many of the other walking, or in some cases flying, bullets as possible. With each new room you enter, you face a wave of such enemies with only a pistol to defend yourself with, and as you progress through the game, more dangerous varieties of enemy begin to appear, and you've got to try and get as far as possible with only 1 hit point. On the bright side, your character is quite nimble, plus you have a dodge roll available. The pistol you start with has infinite ammo, but it can still take a while to kill anything. Thankfully, there's always a chance of enemies dropping one of 3 special weapon pickups, those being Spread, Omni, and Rapid. Spread and Rapid are pretty much self-explanatory, while Omni fires a single bullet that explodes in 8 directions after a short while. All 3 pickups have limited ammo, and while you can refill some of that ammo by performing a perfect dodge roll, you only regain 5 bullets per object dodged, and you can't go past the max ammo capacity of the power-up. Enter the Gun Dungeon seemed to have a couple of bugs going on. Although, this being a parody bootleg and one published by Devolver Digital of all companies, part of me would wonder if the bugs weren't actually intentional, were it not for the fact that one such bug was my game crashing when a room filled with enemies. I would also get caught on thin air as I tried to walk around, and once an enemy even spawned into a pit area where theoretically no one should be able to get into, although fortunately I was still able to shoot him. Finally, we have Shooty Boots, easily the most addicting game in the lineup if my time spent with it is anything to judge by. The game being ripped off here is done well, and I could easily see this being an alternative, harder mode for the original game. You still, presumably, control the same character, except now, instead of wearing bullet-shooting boots, you ride around in one, and the control feels very reminiscent of the shoe from Super Mario Bros. 3. It's a bit awkward, I'm not gonna lie, but you can hover across the field by shooting in midair, gaining a little more control over your movement. Shooty Boots, unlike Down Well, is an auto-scroller and has very minimal enemy variety, with only the floating slimes, the frogs, and the worms making an appearance. Your default offensive footwear is the nearly titular Shoot Boot, which fires like a machine gun, and although the shop and upgrades are gone, you can still switch to one of 2 other kinds of boots by finding and shooting open these chests, which cost 10 gems to open, plus another 10 for every other chest you've opened. The other boots you can find are the Heel, which fires a laser, and the High Top, which fires a shotgun blast. Each boot has a limited amount of ammo, determined by the number of letters in the boot's name, but as in Down Well, the ammo is instantly refilled once you hit the ground or bounce on an enemy. You also heal one of 4 hearts when you pick up a new boot. As fun as it is, Shooty Boots also has its fair share of bugs, mainly manifesting themselves this time as eldritch horrors like slimes frozen in place, frogs spawning within the level walls, and conjoined worms trapped in an endless moment of glitch. And again, with Devolver being behind this, a small part of me just can't help but wonder if these aren't actually intentional. With the exception of Castlevania, which can go stick its head in a pig, most of the quote-unquote bootleg games on display here are actually quite enjoyable. I'm sure they're not the most complex games in the world by any means, and you probably won't get more than an hour or so of enjoyment out of each of them, but that just one more time feeling is definitely present and accounted for with many of them. And besides, regardless of how long you end up playing, and regardless of how fun they are, one thing is undeniably clear. Devolver Bootleg is, if nothing else, a damn good marketing tool. I mean, after all, even the one bootleg I absolutely hated succeeded in getting me interested in a game with a cat in a mech suit.